Good evening. Thank you all so much for being here for this momentous occasion. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Kelly Sims Gallagher. I'm a professor of energy and environmental policy and the interim dean this year at the Fletcher School. And it has been my honor to oversee our many 90th anniversary celebrations of the Fletcher School around the world this year. And it's been a true pleasure to travel the world and meet with all of our alumni and really celebrate this school with all of the members of our global community. Tonight marks an exciting milestone in this 90th anniversary celebration as we gather to actually commemorate the actual birthday of Fletcher's founder, Austin B. Fletcher. He was born 172 years ago in Mendon, Massachusetts. And as some of you have heard me talk about before, he was the president of the Tufts Board of Trustees from 1913 to 1923. And in 1914, made the bequest in his will to provide the funds to establish the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy here at Tufts University. And part of what we're doing tonight is to honor his life and his legacy and his incredible foresight in creating this bequest to create this amazing school that we all love so much today. So at each of the 90th anniversary celebrations we've held around the world so far this year, we've highlighted one of our 11 fields of study. And given that March is Women's History Month, and just last week on March 8th, we celebrated International Women's Day, we felt it was appropriate to highlight our gender and intersectional analysis field of study on Founders Day. You will learn more about this field of study later in the program, I have no doubt, with Professors Titan and Mazarana in the program. But let me just say that gender and intersectional analysis provides a truly important lens on global affairs, whether we're looking at how armed conflict and war affect women and children, or in my own domain, how water and energy scarcity creates more work for women and children who have to spend more of their time going in search of resources, to provide just two examples. I'm so pleased that we have such a wonderful program tonight with Professors Kimberly Titan and Diane Mazarana, who will be engaging in dialogue with the President and CEO of Rockefeller Philanthropy Advisors, Latanya Mapp. And before we hear from them, it's my pleasure to announce that in addition to celebrating our Founders Day tonight, we will also be awarding two of our outstanding alumni with the Fletcher Women's Leadership Awards. The Women's Leadership Awards were created by the Fletcher Board of Advisors in 2014 in order to recognize and support outstanding graduates who identifies women in positions of leadership at a midpoint in their careers across the public and private sectors, NGOs and academia. So each year, two awards are presented. And this year, the board will be awarding Bonny Ling, the Executive Director of Work Better Innovations, with the Private Sector Award, and Xanthe Scharff, Xanthe Scharff is the co-founder of the Fuller Project, will win the Private Sector Award. And to present these two awards, it's a great honor for me to introduce one of our board members, Maureen Alphonse Charles. Maureen is the Senior Vice President at Diversified Search Group, one of the fastest growing executive search firms in the world, focused on diversifying leadership across all industries and sectors. She has more than 20 years of experience leading complex executive searches, consulting, finance, development, and operations effort for a variety of institutions. In addition to her Senior Vice President role, Maureen also serves in a Managing Director capacity for Koya Partners. Her clients range from Big Brothers, Big Sisters, and Big Sisters to JP Morgan and more. Before coming to Koya, she was the Senior Vice President and COO of The Partnership, a consulting firm that builds cross-sector, multicultural, and diverse leadership talent. And prior to that, she built leadership teams in her role as Vice President of Recruitment at Citi Year. She's the recipient of numerous awards for her work. I'll just mention a couple. She was honored in 2019 with the YW Boston Academies of Women's Achievers, which recognizes some of Boston's brightest boldest and most influential women, exactly how I think of Maureen. And she's also been honored as one of Boston's most influential women by the Harvard Club and as local women of influence by the Boston Business Journal. So it seems only right that such an extraordinary woman be the one to present Bonny and Xanthe with the Fletcher Women's Leadership Awards tonight. Everyone, please welcome Maureen.
Thank you so much, Dean Gallagher, for that very gracious introduction. First and foremost, I'd like to thank all of you for joining us today to acknowledge the amazing accomplishments of these alumni. The Fletcher Women's Leadership Award, as you just heard, right, was established in 2014 by board members. And I'm so pleased to say Betsy Parker Powell is here with us, founding member. Let us just acknowledge her. And stand on your shoulders. So glad you're here. And I would also like to take a moment to thank Alice Finn, who has been leader of the group for a number of years for her work as well. Alice, please stand. So as you've heard, right, each year we get a pool of nominees and they're all extraordinary. And the selection committee truly struggles to narrow it down to just 2 recipients, right? Because all of these women are doing remarkable things and they are in their own professional spheres doing extraordinary work. As you know, Fletcher alumni around the world are pursuing important work and they are changing lives. They're doing all the things that their Fletcher education prepared them to do. Today, we present awards to 2 recipients representing the private and the public sectors. We have Bonny Ling, an MALD graduate of the class of 2002, and Xanthe. Let's just stop and pause again. We're always glad to know that classmates are in the house, right? It always makes a huge difference. So very excited that you're here. And then, of course, there's Xanthe Scharff, who received her MALD in 2006 and her PhD in 2011. And so where I'd like to start this evening is to really focus first on Bonny, and then we'll shift over to Xanthe. Bonny is a businesswoman. She's a practitioner and researcher with a substantial background in human rights and development. She has worked as an environmental, social, and governance analyst and consultant for international businesses keen to make a positive social and environmental impact. Her professional background includes international public service with the United Nations, in field assignments, and with international civil society. She also served as an international election observer in East Timor, and later for the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe and Kosovo and the Republic of Georgia. As she observed the challenges that many faced during the global COVID-19 pandemic, she observed that a different way of working and engaging with the local community to support sustainable development was actually possible. She co-founded and is now the executive director of Work Better Innovations, an international sector enterprise working on new ideas for a responsible economy, both as a research consulting firm and as a community service organization. Its education and training work on preventing the risks of forced labor has appeared in the corporate sustainability reports of Target, Dell, and Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. It received the Community Innovation of the Year Award in 2022 in Portsmouth, England, for community service to build a responsible economy from the ground up. So Bonny, as if that were not enough, right? She's also a senior non-resident fellow with the University of Nottingham, Taiwan Research Hub. She's a research fellow at the International Think Tank Institute for Human Rights and Business, and a global Taiwan Institute scholar and visiting professor at the School of Law, National Yang Ming Chiao Tung University. Hope I did justice to that. Where she teaches a postgraduate course on business and human rights. She is a co-founder of the Taiwan Project for Business and Human Rights, a project dedicated to increasing knowledge and building the local capacity needed to address business and human rights issues in her hometown of Taiwan. In addition to her law degree from Fletcher, Bonny received a Bachelor of Science in Ecology from the University of Georgia, reflecting her long-standing interest in environmental ethics, a Master of Philosophy in Criminology from the University of Cambridge, and a PhD in law from the Irish Centre for Human Rights at the National University of Ireland in Galway. She lives in England, so we're so lucky that she could take the trip across here with her family, including her daughter Adeline, who is here with her tonight, which makes it extra special, right? And so it's with great honor, right, on behalf of the Fletcher Women's Leadership Award Committee to present this award to Bonny Ling.
Okay, come on, just sit here. Thank you so much.
There we go. There.
Thank you. Thank you. Wow. Thank you, Maureen, for such generous introduction. I'm really bowled over. And I thought today, my task today would be to get through today without crying, so I'm still trying. All right, so I thank the Fletcher Advisory Board and the Selection Committee for this great honor to be here with you to celebrate the 90th anniversary of Founders Day and Women's History Month. I am really beyond words. I also want to thank my classmates, class of 2002, for the nomination. During the pandemic, we started a regular check-in on each other. Since then, this group has stayed and has remained as a pillar of strength for each other, for all of us as we navigate the joy and the challenges of everyday life. They're generous in spirit, they're smart, and they're compassionate, and I thank you. So, thanks to all watching this on Zoom, including my team in England. It's almost close to midnight for them, and then they just delivered a community service project earlier today with socialized, marginalized members in Portsmouth. And we're on the cusp of announcing tomorrow the first Taiwan Business Forum on Human Rights and Environmental Due Diligence tomorrow, bringing together international corporate leaders along with local business leaders. And we're aiming to drive sustained business change with respect to human rights and environmental impact in where I come from, Taiwan. So thanks to my wonderful daughter who made the journey with me to share with me this beautiful occasion. So it's a quirk of life that a former Fletcher graduate who deliberately heavy-packed her courses in law, Professor Johnson, in human rights, in negotiations, and tried to do as few business courses as possible, is now here receiving an award for leadership in the private sector. I really couldn't believe it. Thank you. It is also a quirk in the totality of the life we lead that I'm here before you today, picking up this award, flanked by a funeral the week before and going into a funeral the week after. So I've been thinking a lot about what it is that we leave behind. And had I written this speech a month ago, it probably would have sounded very different. We're here today to also remember Alston Barclay Fletcher, who left a legacy fund almost a century ago to establish our beloved school, the first school for international affairs in the US. And we Fletcherites, we like to remember that, right? So happy 90th birthday, Fletcher. Now, when I think back to my 2 years at this school, the thing that I most treasure is the space of genuine connection between the unlikeliest colleagues and friends. This is why we say whatever happened at Blakely stays at Blakely, right? And, you know, it's being demolished, so I guess it would take its secret with it. We had diplomats from countries where there were no bilaterals, yet there was something special that was created out of all of our differences, a Fletcher solidarity that I still benefit from to this day. Some years ago, I made the decision to become more vocal and visible in my work to advocate for migrant rights out of solidarity as a migrant myself. I felt so keenly invisible in a world where the narrative on migration has become conveniently categorized into the wanted and the unwanted, pivoting on an arbitrary line of high wage versus low wage. This arbitrary line meant that when our baby stroller was stolen in Switzerland, I asked our very, very kind neighbor if he had seen it. He had seen anyone taking it. So this gentleman, with no malice in his heart and no malice in his eyes towards me, said, "It's all the migrants coming and stealing things." I mean, look at my face, right? So I started to speak about migration as a migrant. I started asking, would we, as high-wage migrant workers, were typically not visible in this space around migrant rights, will we accept a recruitment system that binds us to risk of debt bondage by asking us to fork out the cost of our own job placement abroad? For the migration corridors that I work on, this could be sometime as high as $5,000 that migrant workers pay to secure their jobs abroad before they have even started their first day of work. So I started to work on this in all the corridors I could find, in business meetings, in civil society meetings, in meetings with government stakeholders. In the past few years, I've seen how effective this migrant solidarity can be. We can hold up a space of genuine connection. We can forge creative spaces, nudge things forward, and leave good pieces of ourselves behind. We can pull our whole weight on a vision of responsible labor recruitment, responsible consumption and production in an ecosystem that does not destroy the planet. This can be what we leave behind. It is difficult, really, no doubt. But let's face it, we didn't choose to come to Fletcher because it was the easiest to do. We came to Fletcher all believing that we can tackle global challenges, that our voices and gesture can catch a resonance and lead to different outcomes. We all really believe in a bit of the impossible. So I look at the people rising up behind us here in this auditorium and our wonderful and capable children. And I know you can carry the load, but we still hope to make lighter your load, because this is not the world that we want to leave behind. So I'm really moved to be here amongst you. Of all of us looking at the global challenges of our time and say what we do in the totality of our connected lives, it matters. So I want to thank the founder for the gift almost a century ago that led us all here today. And thank you, Fletcher, the advisory board, the selection committee, and my classmates for this wonderful recognition. And lastly, let me wish you, may we all have the great fortune of having strong, kind, compassionate women, no matter their age, be by our side. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Bonnie, for those inspiring words and deepest congratulations, and we will continue to believe in the impossible. Thank you so much. Now, we're going to continue the evening with our next recipient, who you have already seen. Xanthe Scharff is our award recipient for her leadership in the public sector. Dr. Xanthe Scharff is an award-winning nonprofit founder and a frequent speaker about women's rights and foreign policy. She is a co-founder of the Fuller Project, the global nonprofit newsroom dedicated to groundbreaking reporting on women as a regular contributor to foreign policy. Xanthe launched the Fuller Project from Turkey while reporting in Istanbul and on the Syrian border. She has built the project to be the go-to source for exclusive, in-depth global reporting about women that would otherwise be untold. Its journalism is relied on by decision makers and published in renowned outlets such as the New York Times and the Washington Post. Its newsroom and communications team have won 24 industry awards and citations, and the newsroom's reporting has spurred federal funding for maternal care in the United States, the hiring of hundreds of policewomen in India, and the banning of virginity testing in state hospitals in the Philippines. During the COVID-19 pandemic, she wrote in the Boston Globe of a need for federal release of data to better inform policies, and her reporting in the time was among the first to call attention to the disproportionate impact of COVID on women, especially economically. She began her career working for the World Bank in Peru and later returned to investigate whistleblower claims of government and corporate collusion, exposing illegal environmental abuses in indigenous communities. This is tough stuff. After working for the United Nations in Sudan and observing military posts in South Sudan, she published research in Plowshare's journal that proved the efficacy of international enforcement of child and adult disarmament. Xanthe graduated with honors from New York University before attending Fletcher for her MALD and PhD, and has completed executive education courses at Harvard Business School and the Kennedy School at Harvard. She also attended the Sulzberger Program for News Leaders at Columbia School of Journalism. A lifetime member of the Council on Foreign Relations, she's also the founder and board chair emeritus of Advancing Girls' Education in Africa. She currently serves on the board of advisors at the Henry Lear Institute for Human Security here at Fletcher. She was named a distinguished alumna of Tufts University and the National Cathedral School in Washington, D.C., and has been awarded the Helen Gurley Brown Genius Grant for her visionary leadership on climate journalism. She's a frequent moderator, keynote speaker, and a guest lecturer about journalism, women, global affairs, and leadership. She resides in Washington, D.C., and it is with great pleasure and a true honor on behalf of the Fletcher Women's Leadership Award Committee to present this award to you, Xanthe Scharff.
I'm so honored to receive this award, and I am really even more honored to have Maureen give my introduction. I mean, wow. I highly suggest that anytime you're going to be introduced, that you call Maureen. I do want to thank you, Maureen, for chairing the committee to select this year and for all the work that you do for the Fletcher Women's Leadership Award. And Elizabeth, I didn't know you were the founder of this award, but I have to thank you as well. It does really mean something to receive this honor. I also want to thank you, Cecily Davis, Dean Gallagher, and thanks to our former dean, Admiral Stavridis, who nominated me for this award along with my classmates. I also want to thank my partner, Ana Reyes, who is here taking video dutifully. I love you, even though you messed up very badly by going to SICE. You heard Bonnie say, we were the first. So, I mean, it's in the text, it's fine. We are gathered today, as Bonnie said so eloquently, to mark a very important anniversary. 90 years of this beautiful school that was founded with the intention to bring the world closer together. An anniversary is also an invitation for us to revisit the places here at Fletcher, the people, all of you, the places and also the values that really form the foundation of our experiences. And so today I am so happy to have a chance to look back at my time at Fletcher. And I do have to tell you, it's really extra special to come to Medford in the spring. There's just that unique sense of panic in the air as we try to secure our internships, our jobs, and make it through exams. It's so exciting. It's all generative. It's a little anxious, but it's forward motion. And during my time at Fletcher, and of course, having stayed for the PhD, I was here for a very, very, very long time. So I put in my time, but I was also all about forward motion. I don't think I ever really stopped once I got here. It started with the networking with the Fletcher Mafia to land that internship that I wanted to have doing something really important abroad. And this was different because that was when networking didn't mean just stalking people on LinkedIn. I did land that internship in Malawi that I had dreamed of. While I was there, I got a chance through a Fletcher friend, actually, to write an article for the Christian Science Monitor. The editor was actually here recently. Amelia is a graduate as well and joined Professor Burgess and I wrote that article about a girl named Annie who had dropped out of school. And the readers were really moved by Annie's story. And so they sent funds to help her and other girls like her. And I took that money and started advancing girls' education in Africa with help from a lot of friends here and professors and alumni who came on the board. At the same time, I was starting my PhD program here at Fletcher. I threw myself into fieldwork in Uganda because apparently I was not busy enough. Or maybe I was just trying to avoid job searching at the time, also a rational decision. I also dove into parenthood and had 2 babies pretty much back to back. And it was faster than I could say, Dr. Schultz, could you please give me a 5-minute excuse for roll of force because I got to go do a diaper change. It was all happening. And it's what I wanted for my life, that constant movement forward. I got my dream job at a think tank and I felt like it was all perfect. Except I was really moving forward so fast I couldn't actually stay in the present. I had 2 kids under 2, what felt like a big job, and I was still trying to write on the weekends, keep my byline up. Burnout basically was coming for me faster than your midterm deadlines. Now this was noticed by others sooner than it was noticed by me. So I'm going to set the stage for you of my big aha moment. Le Pain Quotidien, DuPont Circle, tea ordered, my boss, sweet as can be. Xanthe, you have forgotten entire conversations at work. Spoiler alert, forgetting things, also lying, not desirable traits in the workplace, unless you're running for president. A decade of all this racing had really left me burnt out. You know, for a nonprofit founder, but also for any of us, our passion, our ability to believe is really the most important thing we have, and it is part of our work to keep it alive. I really needed to go back to the things that ignited my passion in the first place. Being in the field, listening to people, connecting across differences. Those are the things that we learn how to do at Fletcher. So I did what any reasonable person would do. I packed up my kids and moved to Turkey and began reporting about Syrian refugees and Turkish activists fighting for their rights. Nothing says restore like conflict reporting. If you're a Fletcherite. It really was a whole new world for me. I was free of footnotes, but now I was terrified that more than a dozen people were going to be reading these articles. It was very humbling. Listening to Syrian women forging a new life, Turkish women fighting for their rights when they were being shut down left and right. It really was what I needed to restore. Not my sleep, but certainly my passion. I was listening again. I was reporting on the present, and for a long while, not racing forward. It took about a year just listening, working at a craft that I had not mastered. And at a moment, I was ready to move forward again. It happened because while I was reporting, I realized how much women's voices are left out of news. At that time, the statistic was that women were only a quarter of the people who show up in news. Unfortunately, that is still the same, but we have made some progress. Now, this being the gender studies powerhouse that it is, you all knew this long before I did, fist bumps to the left. And I will say hats off. We were just talking, Professor Mazaran and I, about how when I was here, hers was the only class on gender studies, but you all can barely imagine that because now there are 13 professors doing gender studies work in 20 classes. So here's to change. So I spent the next decade building the newsroom, and we did spur changes. We did reporting that saved people's lives. This time, though, I was very careful to avoid that Latanya quotidian moment. I built in time to go back, to listen to women along the way, and stay connected. I went back to Malawi and sat down with Annie again, the girl I first wrote about and heard about her life, her hopes, dreams, disappointments. I interviewed and listened to Palestinian and Israeli women, the women who are forging dialogue and always fighting for peace in the most extraordinary times. I went back to Turkey as well and embedded with the frontline journalists, the women who cover femicide to try to bring a form of justice in a country where women's rights are being eroded. These women's stories, and women like Maureen and Elizabeth and Bonnie, this is what reminds me of why I work for women and girls and why I always will. In advance of this, I wrote to a couple of other women who have received this award, both from my class of 06, best class. Just kidding, you can share the title. And Connie Schneider and Karun Demirjan, they told me how much this award had really meant to them and how they reflected over the years. And it does really mean something to lift other women up and to create a platform to talk about the very hard work that we're doing every day, even at times when we're working against the current. They talked about how it had opened doors, how it had given them that extra boost in professionally, but also that it really confirmed to them the value of their work, especially during hard times. Maureen, we were just talking about hard times. The past 4 or 5 years everywhere around the world, in the US as well, we have definitely passed through hard times. And what you said, I think, is right, which is we just have to maintain our intentionality through it all. And that's what this award is about. I'm so grateful to receive it and also to have this opportunity to come back to something that restores me, come back to Fletcher, to be here with the wonderful professors that nurtured me and everyone else during our time here. some of whom are here tonight, and I'm really delighted to get a chance to reconnect. And to meet all of you, students who are relentlessly pushing forward despite exhaustion, internship anxiety, and everything else. But you're working here to build a better future, and I hope to help you on your way. Happy birthday to Fletcher, and here's to another phenomenal 90 years bringing the world closer together. For those of you who aren't up too late tonight studying, Professor Katrina Burgess and I have a roundtable in the Murrow Room tomorrow to talk more about nonprofit leadership and the Lear Institute, which is a great part of where I got my start in the PhD program. Thank you all so much.
Don't forget.
So, okay, I'm trailing my microphone. You have a diplomatic gaffe, but I think it's all. So admit it, you all feel so much better after listening to the two awardees this evening. If that doesn't restore your sense of optimism, then I don't know what will. So I'm Kimberly Tyden, and with Diane Monserrano, I co-direct the Gender and Intersectional Analysis Program. And you've had a little bit of an introduction already as to why we think our program is so spectacular. So in a faculty meeting earlier this week, one of our colleagues noted that the Fletcher School was founded in 1933, a time when there was a withdrawal from international engagement, a rise in virulent nationalism. He suggested we're standing at the cusp of something that's redolent with these threats and a few others: environmental degradation and nuclear proliferation, and I would add, attacks on sexual and reproductive rights around the globe, and certainly right here for those of us who call the US home. The world needed then and needs now the insights, skills, and commitments of our amazing students here at Fletcher, particularly our gender and intersectional analysis students. I believe this very much. Our Gaia students are one of the best antidotes to despair. So the next time you're scrolling through the headlines, come on over and look at what our students are doing. So let me begin with a clarification. Gender and intersectional analysis is a skill. It is one that we teach here across those many professors and classes. It is not a hunch, it's not a warm and fuzzy little feeling that you have. It's a skill that we train our students to great effect as they go out into the world. I'll say a bit more about that. Why gender matters. It's always a variable. It may not be the determining variable, but it's always there. And whenever I'm talking to someone who keeps telling me that something has nothing to do with gender, I always wonder why they're so invested in trying to convince me and perhaps themselves of that. Gender may not be the determining variable, but it's there, as is intersectionality. Sometimes what matters most is race or class, able-bodiedness and assumptions about that, perhaps religion, social status, you name it. These are what things we look at here in Gaia. We're interested in how these identities, all those I just mentioned and more, come together, and what does that saturation point mean? How it confers privilege on a few and disadvantage on far too many. Now, our Gaia students research pretty much everything. You name a problem, we've got some Gaia student working on it. Obstetric violence in Gaza, got it. Sexual violence in Ukraine, yep. Gender apartheid in Afghanistan. We have people that are working on all of these problems and so many more, including the very tenacious racial disparities in maternal and child health here in the United States. So we name a problem, we've got a Gaia student, but you also have a Gaia student probably out there figuring some solutions as well. Some of those might be child protection measures. They might be community recycling projects. They could be a better response to sexual violence survivors, something that's more respectful of their experiences. It could be the devastation of extractive industries in the DRC or Colombia, a place close to my heart. But we don't just look at the problems, we don't just come up with solutions. I also think this is a real space of hope. We also look at transnational solidarity, practices of activism that sustain us. It seems to me that as I look around at our students on a daily basis, we also look at practices of care. And I think it's so important to remember, and certainly our awardees and our keynote speaker, who you'll hear from shortly, are wonderful reminders of how important this is. There's never a shortage of suffering, but I hope that we also hold present that we also inhabit a world of compassion and of people's absolute tenacious hold on hope. So I'm now going to turn it over to my colleague Diane to introduce our keynote speaker.
Welcome, everyone. I'd like to introduce our really distinguished keynote speaker. We're super excited that she's with us, and I'm really happy that you're all joining us. Latanya Mapp is the president and CEO of the Rockefeller Philanthropy Advisors. She previously served as president and CEO of the Global Fund for Women. This is when I was 18 years old, and I was a young budding feminist, and I was looking at what organizations are making a difference for women around the world. The first one that I came to was the Global Fund for Women. So she's been the president of an organization I have admired since I was just starting my university career. The Global Fund for Women is a public foundation that supports courageous activists who are fighting for justice and equality in their communities. Previously, she was the executive director for Planned Parenthood Global, the international arm of Planned Parenthood Federation of America, with regional and country offices in Africa and Latin America. Before joining Planned Parenthood Global, she worked for 8 years as a human rights officer for UNICEF and 10 years with USAID. An attorney by training, she began her career at the NAACP Legal Defense and Education Fund in Washington, D.C. She is the recipient of many honors and awards, including 2 esteemed Meritus Honor Awards from the U.S. government, and the highest honor in civil service, the Superior Honor Award from the U.S. State Department. She was also among 30 Foreign Service officers honored with Colin Powell Fellowship by then Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice. Additionally, she is the author of the book, The Everyday Feminist, the key to sustainable social impact driving movements we need now more than ever. I'm about 2/3 of the way through that book. It's fantastic. If you're a student in my class, be ready, you're gonna be reading some of it. It's excellent. And she serves on the boards of Oxfam International, Oxfam America, Management Sciences for Health, and the Luminate Foundation. She's an adjunct professor of population and family health at Columbia University's Mailman School of Public Health. In addition, she's an ICAP and a Woodrow Wilson Fellow, as well as a member of the prestigious Council on Foreign Relations. She holds a Bachelor's of Arts in Government and Politics, a Master's in Public Policy, and a JD from the University of Maryland. Welcome.
Some guy made these up. Clearly, where are we gonna?
Certainly big plan for no pockets, right? Yeah.
I have a theory, but I don't have a So, I know you meant earlier.
Are we mic?
Oh,
Are mics
We
on?
are.
Can you guys hear us? Okay.
They've got us, okay.
So I know some students, and I now mic this. I know some students were fortunate enough to already meet with Ms. Mapp, because I've been hearing all these fabulous things about you from them. But we're going to exercise a little bit of professorial rights here. We get to ask the first question, so we're very excited about that. So my colleague Diane has already mentioned your book, which is wonderful. And it will be on syllabi. I totally agree with you. And it's really inspiring. It's also so insightful. What's an everyday feminist? Why do they matter so much?
Great question. And first of all, I'll just say, when I was here a number of years ago at the annual gender conference put on by the students, and I had such a fabulous experience here. I am not an alumni, I'm, I guess like your partner, I have to rethink that, but I'm certainly really was so impressed by the students, their questions. And then to hear there is a program, Gender and Intersectional Analysis, blew me away. For so many reasons. First, I'm a good friend of Kimberly Crenshaw, who, as many of you termed intersectionality because the work she's doing between or has done in many ways in gender and race. And so for me, it was interesting writing this book. It was really about all of the, in some ways, mentors, whether they named themselves that or not, in every single country I served in, you know, being with the UN, being with USAID, and running the international program out of Kenya, I've served in many countries. And there was always some woman who kind of came and took me on, who helped me navigate the spaces that I was in. And I think I could not be where I am in my career today without having had these women take me into their space. And so when I talk about an everyday feminist, I'm really trying to reclaim the word from what my grandmother thought of a feminist was much more white women who live on the other side of town. I'm from Philadelphia, in a social economic sphere that actually, as she put it, worried about their gender. And I have found that even she were the most profound feminists that I've ever met in my life. And now that I'm of an age and having done this work for 30 years, I'm positive that feminism, whether you call it or not, is something that we can scientifically point out as women who always show up. You know, we talk about we use this language about how feminism is not just a study, but it is an actual way of acting in your community. It is a way of being able to propel, you just talked about it, to continue to do the work of your alumni, of your students, despite what's wrong, because it's not a timed job. It is the way that we live as humans in a world that requires that we invest in what's happening in our world. So the book really does spell that out in a number of different ways across continents. And it allows us to really think and talk to those that in philanthropy, which is the field that I work in, are supporting this work. Because actually, we have now done study after study and see that only 1% of philanthropic dollars is actually getting to the core grassroots women's groups in the world, right? And half of that for women of color. So living in Africa, Asia, and other parts of the world. So when you look at that number, when you look at what they do, what they deliver, all the major social movements in the world are almost without fail started by some woman in some community that needed to address some social issue. And so then if we're funding, if they're so impactful in bridging all of the work that happens in their communities, in their countries, in their regions, then why are we not investing in that work at a level that we see impact in any sector? And so that is what the book is just trying to say. They're amazing, whether they call themselves feminists or not, they're doing all of this work for all of us, not just women in their communities. And we should invest in that work and allow them to have a living that will further that work. And so that was why the book came about, so.
Great. So we have fantastic students here and alumni who want to make a difference for justice and equality in the world through their work. I always say that the faculty here is doing their life's work, not a job. And I know as students, you'll go out, you will do your life's work. You will not do a job, you will do your life's work. So you have spent decades supporting feminist activists around the world, from local to global efforts. Based on what you've learned from your work and these activists, what advice can you give to our students to help them really make a meaningful difference, first in their own lives for this equity and justice, and second in the lives of those they will work with as professionals?
Yeah, and I had all this stuff written down, and then I spoke to the students before coming to the reception. And some of them were struggling with whether or not they would go into a corporate environment. I sincerely believe you can be a champion for change wherever you are. I don't think it matters the setting that you're in, if that is your mission, if that is your passion. In fact, I hope more of us go into sectors where we're not traditionally sitting. I mean, look at our, awardees tonight. I mean, if we don't, then we'll be missing some of the work that needs to be done from all sides. And we won't have the champions in spaces where they need to be in order to recognize the change that's happening. And so I would like us to embrace that, that passion. And it's less so where you work or, being so great and founding amazing things. It's more about how you bring that into the space that you're in. I don't want you to be unhappy. You have to take care of yourself. But I do say that there is this opportunity to lift up the voices of the people that are doing this work from where you sit. You don't even have to be a journalist. I mean, you could be sitting at Google and figure out how to bring those voices in, how to have that conversation with communities from where you are. Recognize your privilege and recognize your limitations, but be an advocate for change for women wherever you sit. That's simple as it gets, yeah.
Can I have one more before we open up to the floor?
Yeah, I think we each get one more.
Oh, yeah. Because we have the mics.
That's right.
Okay, so at Fletcher, one of the things, and you've anticipated this a bit in the end, what you've already said, and I really appreciate it. So at Fletcher, we emphasize that gender is not just code for women. And we always, remind students in class, if you can read a document and every time the word gender appears, you just do a search and replace and put in women, you're missing something. The gender spectrum is a lot wider. You're missing a whole lot of folks that are being left out. So I'm curious if you might share some of your key concerns for people located outside of those men and girls and women and boys and all these sorts of things, about the great, big, huge LGBTQ plus communities that are all around us and form a big part of the networks of people we love. And then coming from that also, as you said, and I so appreciate, feminism is for everybody. It frankly makes the world a better place, as you have made clear. What role can some of those other genders, men and boys, what have you, play in building for a more just and equitable kind of future?
Absolutely. I mean, there is no feminism without masculinity. I think the way that the patriarchy has become so toxic and how it perpetuates, the ills of our community, whether that's capitalism, colonialism, in very varied ways around politics and economics, is the challenge, right, for a feminist thought. And so I think we're all on a journey, right? So we're all in a spectrum in one way or the other. I remember when I served in Ethiopia, I was with UNICEF and we were doing a program on street children. And the children working on the street became my primary concern because they were ignored in the more classic sort of begging, but like prostitution by young girls on the street was not classified, and so they got no government support. So we were trying to do that work. Well, here's the irony. As I was trying to pull off the street the sex workers who did not want to be there but felt they had to be for economic and social reasons, we would do this reunification to their homes because they were almost exclusively from parts outside of Addis Ababa. And then we would make sure they get home. We make sure there was some economic incentive to their communities to bring them back. And then we would get them in school and so forth. But what we didn't do was we didn't actually, for the girls, we didn't send them to doctors for their sexual and reproductive health. And so one girl, and I do talk about this in the book, who ultimately passed because she learned she was pregnant and that she was HIV positive, and she starved herself to death, essentially. No information, no education, and it was the time when I understood that sometimes boys and girls do need a different approach. And we did need to do more for girls as they were coming out of those situations than probably boys who were working on the streets. But now skip forward, that was some time ago. Now with my child is also gender non-binary. And it's taught me that not only do you have to have, situations where girls get different things, boys get different things, but there's also has to be something for people who live in between or even outside of that. And so I have become more educated about how when you're doing work, and this is the beauty of intersectionality, is understanding the life cycle that people are living through and not just our own concept of what is required. The truth of the matter is, if I had asked the girls and the boys and others what they needed, I probably could have been able to get it to them. And I think that that's part of our learning, is understanding that we can't do things for people, we have to do things with people. And so when I think about the LGBTQ community and what the needs are, I can't, from my framework, understand what that is. But I think as a community of learning and knowledge, we have to be incredibly clear that they're at the table so we can understand what that is. And that's a huge part of the work that we all do. I'm in philanthropy, you're in academia, we're in development and journalism, but we can't do this work without having those that are affected at the table. And I know we say it a lot, but it's worth saying it again, because this is an area where I feel like we learn something and then we go on and create programs and rhetoric around it, but we don't actually have the people who need to be at the table. And so that is something for me that I insist that we can't come up with solutions wherever I am unless the people who are affected are in that room to help come up with the solutions as well.
Great. Well, I am going to open it up to the floor. So there's mics on each side. So if you would just make your way to a mic, and you can just stand in, one on each side or whatever, and in front of each other. And then we'll take 2 questions at a time. So we've got a fantastic speaker with incredibly rich experience. We'd love to have your questions.
He's a brave one.
Yes, please introduce yourself.
Yes, I'm Anya. I'm a MALT student. I focus on general analysis, human security, and conflict resolution, focusing specifically on food access within food systems. And I'm just curious a little bit if you could talk about what your experience was in getting to the positions that you are, and thinking back to the positions that perhaps us as students are in, how to find the confidence perhaps to get to a place of power that you are in.
That's a great question, and thank you. I'm not sure that there's one answer to that question, but here is what I wish when I was getting out of law school and grad school that I had done. I wish I had dreamed bigger. I wish I had dreamed bigger and landed short of some amazing dream than dreaming small and getting past that. And I'll try to put that in some context. I had a simple dream. I had a brother who was arrested when he was a teenager, and I'm from the inner city of Philadelphia. We are not people with a lot of resources, a lot of love in my family, but not a lot of resources. And I saw him cycle through that system when I was maybe about 12 years old, and the detriment that it caused him for the rest of his life, because it followed him, because we couldn't afford to get a good lawyer. So I was going to be a good lawyer, and I was going to make sure that my brother and people like my brother did not get caught up in this system in an unfair way, that race and class was not what dictated how you were treated in the justice system in this country. Actually, that was big, but I think I could have gone bigger. I do. I think I could have gone and thought bigger. And I feel like, in some ways that I did some of that. I changed completely, as you know. So it doesn't matter what the dream is, as long as you're moving towards it. And then if the dream pivots, you kind of, I think we were talking today, Bonnie and I, about how you take your career takes all these kind of pivots that you could have never. Who would have thought I'd be in philanthropy working for the Rockefellers now? I mean, it would have never, ever come up in it would have just seemed, it's so different from what I wanted at that time. But I would say that if I had thought about how do I change the world to make sure you get resources to people who are doing the work, then I maybe would have come up with that. And I say all that just to say that sometimes it's not your courage. I don't think it's your courage. I think it's how big we think. Like how we get like weird about saying we're saving the world. You know, no, save the world. We need you to save the world. Save it for us. And even if you come a little bit short, you can almost guarantee you will have done so much to get to that point that you will be recognized, you will be powerful wherever you sit in your career. I really don't want you guys stressing, as you were saying, about, you know, how am I going to get the next job and what should the next job be? Follow your intuition. Listen to yourself. Take some quiet time. If it feels right, go for it and do it. And be the advocate we were talking about earlier in that setting. I don't think there's a wrong answer. The wrong answer is you go do something that you feel like you really shouldn't do. That's the wrong answer. The right answer is do what you can with what you've got and dream big. Thank you.
Great. Next question. Great.
Hi, thank you so much for joining us. My name's Emma. I'm a second-year master's student. And my question is, well, observation. One of the most important and wonderful elements about being a feminist is building solidarity and having community. So I'm curious to know, what kind of people do you like to surround yourself with? Who is in your circle?
I just had dinner with former President Obama. I think I mentioned this to somebody. The dean, right? So I was like, maybe that's my new circle, but I can't. It's a good circle. He's an incredibly positive person. But I do think that that kind of energy, you know, we're working on it. You know, don't get so bent out of shape that we haven't gotten there yet. It's a journey. And it's a journey that we're getting on together. I do find myself surrounded by very powerful women. And there's something about that. I just went to so one of the things that, and this is the chipping away. In 2014, I was in Bahia in Brazil with a group of feminists, and it was a large group of feminists, very diverse. One of the things that happened during that meeting was that someone called together all of the Black feminists that were there at this meeting to come together and talk about what were some of the things that we in particular felt. And remember, this difference between 1% going to all of that work and half of that for Black leaders of those organizations, right? So what is it that we can do to further it? And in 2016, there was a dream, like we need a fund that is very specific to Black women who lead these organizations. Jump ahead, that planning was going on. George Floyd was murdered. And the people who were, and these are not just Americans, these are women from all over the world. And so we got on calls and we're like, listen, we need to pull that playbook out and get back to the vision that we had at the time. And so Global Fund for Women was in a position that we could actually host this organization. And so for me, it was like, what can I do to further this agenda? And so calling these women back together and these leaders, there's 3 founders of this organization. They were like, all we need is a back end. We could raise the money, but we just can't start an organization on our own. We need some help with that. And I'm like, well, Global Fund for Women can help that. And so many, many others supported the organization. And now the organization is flying the coop. It's going off on its own. It's doing amazing things, has raised almost $100 million to give to Black-led organizations around the world. And so that is the thing, that if I could surround myself with people like that who are just, going to get it done, take the opportunities, find the spaces when they can, and just moving us forward. And the agenda is who I think we all want to be around. And so for me, that continues to inspire me. And actually coming here today, getting me out of New York for a day to talk to all of you is actually quite inspiring. And that's what I like to surround myself with. Thank you.
Great. We have time for one more question. And I want to say we've got 2 questions from this side of the room. So this side of the room. You guys might want to step it up. Yeah, might want to step it up. All right, here we go. Your side of the room is being well represented.
Yes.
I got it.
There you go.
Hi, I am Ishita. I am in the first year mall. So this is with regards to my recent interaction with somebody here at Fletcher. Although being a woman in a man's world is already challenging, and being a colored woman in a man's world is even more added extra layer. So she was working in a big four company, and she told me that at times when she was given a platform, she was considered by some peers that because she is a woman of color, so because they want to portray the organization in that way, that is why she was given a platform. So especially during the time when we are struggling, we are already questioning ourselves again and again, like the imposter syndrome, that whether we know or we are credible enough for this platform. How to overcome that fear, how to overcome that stage to build that confidence that we deserve where we are. We are not here just because we are born in a certain way.
Wow. That's a very hard question. And I want to tell you something, that's the God honest truth. I just asked my coach this very question because I don't know, I think you maybe get through times in your life when you're not feeling that way. And I can talk to my peers who have excelled at their own, in their fields. But I just feel like we're all feeling it. And it could be because I'm the woman, the first woman. It could be because I'm the first Black woman. It could be because I'm the first person not coming from money. I mean, you could just go on the list, right? But I asked her the question because I was wondering why I got invited to the dinner with President Obama. And so I do have I have an executive coach, and she's like, why not? You are fucking amazing. And I had already gone through my head of all of these reasons. I have met I work for the Foreign Service, so I have met it was there under him. So I've met him several times before. And so I'm like, I wonder if they're trying to bring me there because of X, Y, and Z, or because the heads of philanthropy, there's like very few of us that, are, of color, So I'm like, I wonder if that's why they're bringing, me to the table. And how many women, I wonder, will be at that table? So I went through all of that, and she's like, what does that have to do with anything? The question is, what do you need to tell him? What is it that you need to do now that you have that opportunity to be at the table? So what I would say is that I think you can come up with all kinds of reasons to have imposter syndrome, but don't own that stuff. Let it go and figure out what it is that now you have the opportunity, you can turn it into. I think that's the only thing, because there's no way to stop thinking about those things. But once you do, let it go and then move on and do something amazing. And I know you will.
All right, so I'd like us to thank one more time. Yes, thank you. Yeah.
Oh, now we'll introduce our video. Yes. So you've had a chance to hear from one of our PhDs. You got to hear from one of our future PhDs, but I can't say her name because I haven't said that I can do that publicly, but I'll just stare at her a lot. And as you can see, the students who come out of our program do amazing things. And every time we get to honor one of them, we're so delighted. So what a great thing. It's the 90th anniversary of Fletcher, the 9th anniversary of Gaia, and who knows Cynthia Inlow? Come on, raise your hands. You have a Cynthia Inlow. Come on, yeah, you know her work. She's on all the syllabi, and she's amazing. And so is Kimberly Crenshaw. She's on our syllabi too. Absolutely. Stunning work, stunning body work. So one of the things that is delightful is that Cynthia Inlow has decided that Fletcher will be the place where she chooses a home for her doctoral scholarship. So we're inaugurating the Cynthia Inlow Doctoral Scholarship this particular year. And we have made a video about her wonders, and also it features some of our students because we will be looking to raise more funds so that we can make more fabulous people like you come do our program with a little bit less financial crunch. So here's the video. It is the 90th anniversary of Fletcher. This is the perfect year to be inaugurating the Inlow Scholarship.
Our goal is to honor Cynthia's legacy and to be doing it in our gender and intersectional analysis field of study, and also train the next generation of feminist thinkers and activists.
The Enloe Doctoral Scholarship will strengthen Fletcher's reputation as a leader in feminist international relations scholarship and work, and will afford those researchers the ability to fully immerse themselves in the field without worrying about finances.
Our students come to Fletcher because they really want to change the world. Our gender and intersectional analysis program gives them the skills to go out and make that kind of change.
And the research that we're doing here at Fletcher is not just at a theoretical level, but at a practical level and a policy level so that we can make and see real changes.
I'm very excited about this new scholarship. It's about the work that's going to be done that's going to continue to shape the world because it will reshape our understanding.
Cynthia's work is on any IR syllabus that thinks that gender, race, class, and other variables matter.
Xanthea brings together an interest in scholarship, in public policy, and in activism, so she speaks to multiple works and multiple worlds.
I think Professor Emma's biggest impact is demonstrating that there's a question at the end of every answer.
She always says that feminist questions are uncomfortable questions because they question the status quo.
And by questioning everything, we see the power and the institutions and the processes that hold up a lot of what we see.
Bringing a feminist curiosity opens up a whole world that often international relations scholars aren't aware of.
Feminist curiosity was very important to my research. When you look at what's required for peace, for women's experiences in peace, you really need to be curious about what's going on underneath.
Our Fletcher students conduct research, they design policies, they design and evaluate interventions. They're change agents. Funding this means that we can continue to bring the best and the brightest to Fletcher.
It's very exciting whenever a new fellowship allows students who otherwise wouldn't be able to come to Fletcher to come and pursue their own feminist curiosity.
As a student hailing from above, from a lower middle class family, I would have never dreamt of attending a school like Fletcher, and let alone sort of studying gender without the scholarship that I received.
Creating this scholarship will make this research and this education more accessible, not only to more people, but to more kinds of people.
And benefit from an education at the Fletcher School would really boost their work when they go back to their communities, when they engage whether at policy or organized or programmatic level.
One of the primary challenges Fletcher faces is funding for doctoral students. This scholarship would fundamentally change that.
Every time I'm educating one of our students, I'm aware that they're going to go out and have a multiplying effect in this world.
There's going to be ripple effects, maybe waves even. They'll make us more understanding, more engaged, more global in our curiosity.
Our initial goal is $500,000. There is so much goodwill and admiration for Xanthe Enloe that I'm sure we can do it. And every contribution helps. Every person who's read her work and has been moved by her work, this is a chance to let everybody know about that.
Contributing is as easy as scanning this QR code. We hope you'll make your contribution today.
So it's a wrap? All right. Thanks, you guys. Great job. You know, I should have asked for $1 million. What was I thinking? It's Xanthe Enloe.
Well, thank you all so much for coming and joining us at this exciting event. I hope you enjoyed hearing from all our fabulous speakers as much as I did. And special thanks to Maureen and Kimberly, Diane, Bonnie, Xanthe, and Latanya for all your inspiring words. Bringing gender and intersectional analysis to the forefront of our celebration this evening in recognition of Austin B. Fletcher's birthday was a great way to show how far Fletcher has come since its founding. Many of these 90th anniversary events have been a wonderful way to connect with our alumni community throughout the world, but tonight's event is really special because not only do we have a lot of alumni in attendance, but we also have faculty, staff, and students. So I want to say to the students, as you've already heard, you are what makes Fletcher so special. Your commitment to learning, community building, and solving global problems make you a unique group that we find only here at the Fletcher School. You're also why the faculty and staff show up every day. And to our faculty and staff, thank you for making your time at Fletcher way more than just a job. I had that in my remarks before you said that. Really, I know that you all bring all of yourselves to the school every day, consistently going the extra mile to serve our students and our alumni and each other. And it brings me joy to serve alongside each of you. And to the alumni in the room, thank you so much for coming today and renewing your connection to the school. I'd like to encourage you to think of 3 ways that you can help us going forward, besides contributing to the Xanthe and the doctoral scholarship. The first might be the most important, and that is to consider referring a prospective student to the school during this admissions season or the next one. And this is important because you're curating, the future classes, the future alumni, the future members of our community. And you know who is the best, you're like our scouts, and you know who are those people who should come to Fletcher, who would benefit from Fletcher, and who will go on to make us proud. The second thing I'd like to ask you to do is consider taking an intern this summer, or even hiring a new graduate. It is that season of anxiety for all the students, and I see you out there nodding, trying to figure out your plans. And a really great way that you can help our current students is to allow them to experiment with internships in the summer, and then of course to land them that first job out of Fletcher. And third, of course, consider making a financial contribution. As always, as you hear, our first priority is financial aid. So there's a lot to celebrate about Fletcher today, starting with the people I've just talked about. In addition, I'm so proud of how Fletcher shapes the world through the power of ideas advanced by our faculty and our doctoral students and our master's students, the pragmatic global problem solving that our alumni go on to do, as exemplified so beautifully by Bonny and Xanthe, and the rigor and excellence of the education that all the students are benefiting from today. So let's continue the celebration just downstairs in the Hall of Flags. Thanks again for coming.